The early Woodland era. The early Woodland period in Ohio marks a significant transitional phase. This era is often considered the start of the agricultural revolution in North America, and it's characterized by a greater reliance on domesticated plants compared to their earlier archaic predecessors. Modern understanding indicates that the agricultural revolution was less abrupt and revolutionary than previously thought. Instead, the agricultural revolution's transition was more gradual and evolutionary. The early woodland societies in Ohio still represent a distinct and new development in the region's history, despite it being more evolutionary than revolutionary. Unlike the smaller and more temporary structures of the archaic foragers, the early woodland houses were larger and more permanent. Typically, these houses were circular, measuring between 10 and 15 feet in diameter, and they were constructed from log poles interwoven with twigs and likely covered with tree bark. Settlements usually consisted of 1 to 5 such houses, though some, like the Lineback Village in Lorain County here in Ohio, had larger structures. At Lineback Village, archaeologists uncovered a series of post molds forming a circular pattern about 60 feet in diameter. Early woodland communities were primarily still hunters and gatherers, with nuts being a storable and essential food source during the winter. However, at a site in Athens, Ohio, archaeologists also discovered a significant number of small seeds in some early woodland pits. These seeds, although small, represent a significant shift as they were from domesticated plants. Early woodland people had begun cultivating plants from the Eastern agricultural complex, which include squash, sunflower, maygrass, goosefoot, knotweed, some weed, and marsh elder. This agricultural development was a major achievement, similar to the independent domestication of plants in other regions such as Mesopotamia or China. Early woodland people relied less on their ability to move in search of food and more on maximizing the resources from their already existing land. They began clearing forests and planting crops, a very labor-intensive process, to support their communities. While hunters still tracked deer and other game, they often returned home at the end of the day with a feast of vegetables and other crops. The importance of early woodland people's transition to food production is often underappreciated, despite its significant impact on their way of life and the broader history of human agriculture. Archaeologists dedicate significant time to studying the subtle variation in stone weapon tips and stone tools because they are among the most enduring artifacts in the archaeological record. Pottery, which became increasingly important during the early woodland period, did play a crucial role in the storage of seeds and the preparation of gruel, which gruel is a substance similar to oatmeal today. The rise of pottery might be indirectly linked to plant domestication, possibly made feasible by a more sedentary lifestyle that didn't require frequent movement of heavy and fragile clay pots. Archaeologists who often specialize in studying ancient pottery find that pottery styles provide a detailed record of cultural changes over time. Many prehistoric cultures are defined partly by these variations. Pottery, being a sensitive indicator of cultural variation, allows archaeologists to identify refined cultural distinctions between regions starting from the early woodland period. This cultural difference is driven by ecological opportunities and social forces that push groups to emphasize their uniqueness from perceived foreign neighbors. Early woodland pottery vessels were initially large, barrel-shaped, and had thick walls tempered with coarse grit. They featured big knobby handles and cord-marked surfaces, which were scuffed or roughened by paddling the wet clay with a cord-wrapped tool. Now, although this cord marking likely began as a way to make pots easier to handle, it quickly became a decorative technique. Pottery allowed for creative expression, as it could be shaped and decorated in numerous ways and then hardened in the fires. Despite their durability, pottery vessels were brittle and prone to breaking if mishandled. This fragility, though unfortunate for the original owners, has been a boon for archaeologists, providing many pieces of broken pottery to study. These fragments, preserved for thousands and thousands of years, offer insights into the cultural practices of the early woodland people. Banded slate gorgets were also commonly found in Ohio during the early woodland period, and they are typically about the size of an adult's hand and often feature 2 drilled holes for suspension on a cord. These artifacts, along with birdstones, boatstones, and pendants, fall into a category some archaeologists call problematics, as their exact purpose remains unknown. The term gorget originates from the French word for a piece of armor protecting a soldier's throat, but modern archaeologists believe that these items were more likely used as decorative ornaments in ceremonies rather than for battle protection when it comes to the Native Americans. The increasing importance of objects crafted from exotic raw materials was another facet of growing artifact complexity in the early woodland period. The exchange of rare and valuable items allowed early woodland groups to create beautiful, timeless artifacts that we can gander at today. They obtained copper from the upper Great Lakes, marine shells from the Atlantic coast or Gulf of Mexico, and mica from the southern Appalachian Mountains. Artifacts crafted from these materials served as status symbols, highly visible indications of wealth and connections with other peoples and other lands. The more exotic the artifact, the more far-reaching the connection. Whether obtained through trade or as gifts, these objects were tangible certificates representing the goodwill and support of the participating groups. Now let's talk about early woodland earthworks. Another significant development of the early woodland period was the construction of burial mounds and other earthworks. Unlike the natural glacial cames used for late archaic burial grounds, early woodland mounds were artificial constructions, indicating that these people were beginning to reshape their landscape. Each mound was unique, much like snowflakes, with the Adena culture building conical burial mounds ranging from the large Grave Creek Mound in West Virginia to smaller mounds just a few feet high. In summary, the early woodland period was marked by adaptations to a more settled way of life, innovations in pottery, and significant earthworks, reflecting the evolving social and ecological dynamics of the time. Early woodland people constructed circular earthen enclosures up to 500 feet in diameter. In northern Ohio, burial mounds are uncommon. Instead, large, roughly oval enclosures or walls built across bluff tops, such as Seaman's Fort in Erie County, Ohio, are more typical. Similar enclosures on prominent hilltops are also found at Adena sites like the Cold Rain Works near Cincinnati and Peter Village in Kentucky. These large enclosures, seemingly unrelated to mortuary practices, likely surrounded small villages and may have served as social and ceremonial centers for a dispersed population or as defensive structures in response to perceived threats. Although there is no strong evidence of widespread warfare during the early woodland period, conflicts between villages may have occasionally occurred. Burial rituals varied significantly during the construction of a mound, and some individuals were laid out in log tombs. Others were cremated, and some others were buried with lavish offerings such as shell beads, copper antlers, tubular stone and ceramic pipes, flint spear points, and teardrop-shaped flint knives known as catch blades. Many individuals were buried without any offerings, and not all were interred in mounds. The special nature of those buried in mounds suggests that they had a unique status, although the specific reasons for their distinctions do remain unknown. The individuals buried in these mounds were likely political leaders, mighty warriors, revered shamans, admired artisans, or their family members. The diverse burial practices provide insights into the social distinctions within early woodland societies. Generally, the effort invested in a burial and the quantity and quality of grave goods reflect the deceased's status during life or the status achieved through their death. Moreover, the skeletons themselves can reveal important cultural clues and indicate the social position of the deceased. Many of the skulls found in early woodland Adena culture mounds exhibit a characteristic flattening of the normally rounded back portion of the skull, aka elongated skulls. This cranial deformation might result from infants being tied to cradle boards, but the extent of flattening suggests intentional head binding to achieve a desired shape. Some historic Native American groups in the southeastern United States believed that flattening the skull improved eyesight and increased attractiveness. For the Adena, artificial skull shaping might have been a high status mark. Adena mounds were more than burial mounds for important individuals. They were public monuments. These mounds often contained multiple bodies, and the associated burial ceremonies were not merely about honoring the dead. The construction of these mounds likely had broader social and cultural significance, serving as communal activities that reinforced social cohesion and cultural identity. The location of these mounds could have served different social functions, and a mound between two villages could be a place where both communities mourned loved ones with ties to both villages. It could have been a place where they celebrated marriages or held festivals and peacefully resolved disputes. There may have also been theories of the mounds being used as long-distance communication via fire to navigate the riverways, as most of these mounds are built along the rivers. And there have even been tests that have helped favor this theory. Using 3 mounds, archaeologists were able to see 11 miles in total just using fire from atop the mounds. Now let's talk about the religion. The religion of early woodland societies, particularly the Adena, can be explored through the richness and variety of ritual artifacts and artistic depictions of their beliefs recovered by archaeologists. Recent studies of practicing shamans by anthropologists help us interpret Adena artifacts and images in their proper ceremonial context. Shamans use various techniques to induce what we would call today an altered state of consciousness. These techniques include drumming, dancing, fasting, and the use of hallucinogenic plants. Such rituals and the artifacts associated with them offer insights into the symbolic and religious life of the early woodland period, highlighting the spiritual connections that transcended their material exchanges and social structures. Archaeologists have discovered many presumed shaman burials, most thought to be a part of the Adena culture, and a significant feature of the early woodland period is the use of tubular pipes made from stone or clay. These pipes were likely employed by shamans and participants in rituals to smoke hallucinogenic substances. Tubular pipes served as sacred tools, with some adorned with intricate carvings or made from precious materials, reflecting their importance in spiritual practices. Archaeologists have also uncovered several ritual masks from burial mounds, including modified animal skulls from wolves, cougars, bears, and dogs. Archaeologists have also uncovered several ritual masks from burial mounds, including modified animal skulls from wolves, cougars, bears, and dogs. These artifacts underscore the central role of these animals in religious beliefs. One notable example of early woodland shamanic practices is the burial of a shaman at the Ayers Mound in Kentucky who was interred with his ritual garments. This individual, a large and rugged man who died around the age of 25 to 30, had his upper front teeth removed during his lifetime to accommodate a specially crafted wolf's jaw that was found with his remains. Now that's dedication. This wolf jaw was part of an elaborate mask and robe ensemble that was designed to allow the shaman to fully embody the spirit of the wolf during his spiritual rituals. The extreme nature of the tooth removal, a painful procedure likely performed to enhance his role as a shaman, reflects a profound commitment to his spiritual vocation. His burial attire suggests that he was a full-time shaman rather than a part-time practitioner, emphasizing the depth of his dedication to his role within the community. This kind of ceremonial dedication reveals that early woodland shamans were not only spiritual leaders, but also potentially exercised significant authority within their communities. Now, as we reflect on the early woodland period, we honor the spirit of those who walked these lands long before us. Their legacy is woven into the very fabric of the United States and America abroad, reminding us our shared human journey and the importance of preserving and cherishing our history. Let us carry forward the lessons of the past, embracing the values of respect, stewardship, and unity. For in understanding where we came from, we gain a deeper appreciation of who we are and the paths we choose to forge ahead.